everyone, this is my first video on this channel, so hope you all like it. So today's video will be on an story which is in the syllabus for class 11th and 12th ISC. So the name of the story is The Story of an Hour by Kate Chopin. This is one of the most interesting chapters. Like, for me, it's one of the most interesting chapters because when I read this, it was very interesting. Like, at the ending, the story was truly suspicious. Like, I was so very mesmerized by the end of the story that I thought of making this video. So first, let me talk about the author a little bit. So Kate Chopin was born in Missouri on February 8, 1850, and she died on August 22nd, 1904. She was considered one of the first feminist authors of the 20th century. So Kate Chopin had named this story as The Dream of an Hour before, but later it was known as The Story of an Hour. And her stories are really amazing. She is known as a feminist because she has seen a lot through her life, and she makes or writes her poems or stories based on those experiences or based on those things that she has seen. So let's get into the story. The Story of an Hour by Kate Chopin. Knowing that Mr. Mallard was afflicted with a heart trouble, great care was taken to break to her as gently as possible the news of her husband's death. So as we see that here the story starts with a very sad news that Mrs. Mallard, she is the main character of the story, the female character, and she has lost her husband. Her husband has passed out. So obviously when we say that a person is dead or somebody has passed out, it's a very sad thing, or a very sad thing to say or introduce to somebody. So same goes here. And we'll also see that she has a heart problem, so let's just carry on with the story. It was her sister Josephine who told her in broken sentences, veiled hints that revealed in half concealing her husband's friend Richards was there too near her. It was he who had been in the newspaper office when intelligence of the railroad disaster was received, with Brentley Mallard's name heading the list of killed. So as we see that over here, it's written clearly that it was a rail accident, and Richards, who was Mr. Mallard's friend, that means Mrs. Mallard's husband's friend, had introduced and had got the news from the newspaper office that Brentley Mallard is no more there and he has died, he has passed out, and the list headed his name first. He had only taken the time to assure himself of its truth by a second telegram, and had hastened to forestall any less careful, less tender friend is bearing the sad message. Mr. Richards was also very sad to introduce this news to Mrs. Mallard, and he did not go at the first instant, but he rechecked the information that he got, and he rechecked it from the telegram, and then only he went and informed Mrs. Mallard about the news. She did not hear the story as many women had heard the same, with a paralyzed inability to accept its insignificance. So she was very upset, as you can see here. She wept at once with sudden wild abandonment in her sister's arms. When the storm of grief had spent itself, she went away to her room alone. She would have no one followed her. So she was very upset, so she did not allow anybody to follow her, and she went alone to her room and had locked the room. There stood facing the open window a comfortable, roomy armchair. Into this she sank, pressed down by a physical exhaustion that haunted her body and seemed to reach into her soul. She was very, very upset. As you can see, she was haunted from inside. She was exhausted after getting the news. She could see in the open square before her house the top of trees that were all aquiver with the new spring life. Over here, square refers to the windows which was there, and through the window she could see the trees and the new spring life. The delicious breath of rain was in the air. That means it was drizzling, it was raining. In the street below, a peddler was crying his wares. That means a peddler was selling his things, whatever he had with him. The note of a distant song which someone was singing reached her faintly, and countless sparrows were twittering in the eaves. So it was an eve, and there were countless sparrows who were twittering, and there was a faint sound which she could hear. There were patches of blue sky showing here and there through the clouds that had met and piled one above the other in the west facing her window. So over here there is a description that what she could see through the windows, and this is one of the most important parts of this story. She sat with her head thrown back upon the cushion of the chair, quite motionless except when a sob came up into her throat and shook her as a child who has cried itself to sleep continues to sob in its dream. So over here we see that she had rested her head on the chair, on the armchair which she had, and she was in that same motionless situation, in that same way she was lying over there until and unless she got a sob, and she shook her head. She was young, with a fair, calm face, whose lines bespoke repression and even a certain strength. But now there was a dull stare in her eyes whose gaze was fixed away off yonder on one of those patches of blue sky. It was not a glance of reflection, but rather indicated a suspicion of intelligent thought. So over here, there was a reflection which showed that she was thinking something. There was something coming to her and she was waiting for it fearfully. There was something which she was waiting for, and here comes the twist. So let's see what is it. What was it? She did not know. It was too subtle and exclusive to name. She did not know what it was, but definitely something good. Let's just see. But she felt it creeping out of the sky, reaching towards her through the sounds, the scents, the color that filled the air. So everything was good, and something that was coming to her which was very unknown to her, but she wanted to know what that unknown thing was. Now her bosom rose and fell. She was beginning to recognize this thing that was approaching to possess her, and she was striving to beat it back with her will. So she also wanted to know about what was it that was coming to her, and she wanted to fight with it. As powerless as her two white slender hands would have been. When she abandoned herself, a little whispered word escaped her slightly parted lips. She said it's over and over under her breath. Free, free, free. So she said free, free, free. That means we can understand that this is something related to her freedom, her wings which were actually now free to fly. The vacant stare and the look of terror that had followed it went from her eyes. They stayed keen and bright, her pulses beat fast, and the coursing blood warmed and relaxed every inch of her body. She was enjoying it. She did not stop to ask if it were or were not a monstrous joy that held her. A clear and exalted perception enabled her to dismiss the suggestion as trivial. She knew that she would weep again when she saw the kind, tender hands folded in death, the face that had never looked safe with love upon her, fixed and grey and death. She knew that she would cry when she would see her husband laying down over there without any emotion, but somewhere she was also happy to get that freedom. But she saw beyond the bitter moment a long process of years to come that would belong to her absolutely. And she opened and spread her arms out to them in welcome. But still she thought that whatever it might be, even if I cry for that moment, but in the long run, I can be free now, I can be happy now. That means over here, somewhere we can understand that she was having an identity crisis maybe, or maybe there was something that she wanted to do but she couldn't do. So now she knows that she has got that freedom and she wants to reach for that freedom. There would be no one to live for her during those coming years. She would live for herself. She knew now there would be no one to love her, to be there for her, but she would only live for herself. There would be no powerful will bending her in the blind persistence with which men and women believe they have a right to impose a private will upon a fellow creature. So this is like, it has been for a long term that men feel that their wife can be dominated by them. Not only in case of men, even in some cases, women feel that whatever we say to our husband, he needs to listen to that, or he needs to give priority to that. Yes, definitely that's true, but to a certain extent I feel, because it's not that you can put all your wills and all your whatever you feel, you just cannot say another person to do, because he or she has his or her own will. So that's what we see here, that Mrs. Mallard is happy for that there is nobody there to restrict her. That means somewhere maybe she felt that she got restricted by her husband. A kind intention or a cruel intention made the act seem no less a crime as she looked upon it in the brief moment of illumination. When she tried to clarify it somewhere, she felt that maybe it was cruel, but again she felt no, maybe it's okay for herself. She was just thinking about herself. And yet she had loved him sometimes. She felt that maybe her husband was kind of restricting her, therefore she felt that it's good, but yet she had a feeling that no, her husband loved her. Often she had not, but often she felt that no, he did not love her. What did it matter? What could love, the unsolved mystery, count for in face of the position of self-assertion which she suddenly recognized as the strongest impulse of her being? Free body and soul free, she kept whispering. She wanted freedom now. She wanted a free body, a free soul. She did not want anybody to dominate her. She wanted her own free life. Josephine was kneeling before the closed door with her lips to the keyhole, imploring for admission. Josephine, who was Mrs. Mallard's sister, was waiting outside the door and was trying to peep through the keyhole and wanted to get inside. Louis, open the door. I beg, open the door. You will make yourself ill. So over here, for the first time, we get to know that Mrs. Mallard's name is Louis, because up till now there was not even a single part where her name was mentioned. So over here we get to know that Mrs. Mallard's name is Louis, and her sister Josephine was really very upset and was thinking that what could her sister do to herself, and she would make herself ill. What are you doing, Louis? For heaven's sake, open the door. Go away. I am not making myself ill. No, she was drinking in a very exiliar of life through the open window. She was not actually making herself ill, as we can see that it was actually a medical cure for her. She was feeling the winds, the outside weather and everything through that window, and she experienced that now she could get freedom, and which was a medical cure for herself. It was just like a medicine for her. Her fancy was running riot along those days ahead of her. Spring days and summer days and all sorts of days that would be her own. She breathed a quick prayer that life might be long. It was only yesterday she had thought with a shudder that life might be long. So over here we see that now she is happy that summers, winters, spring, everything. Now every time she will have for herself. She'll be free. There will be no one to dominate her, to restrict her. And she also just prayed that now life would be long. But it was just the last day when she was thinking that why is life so long? Because she thought that there was somebody to restrict her. But now she knows there is nobody to restrict her. She arose at length and opened the door to her sister's importunities. There was a feverish triumph in her eyes, and she carried herself unwillingly, like a goddess of victory. She had cried, so therefore her eyes were red, and it was feeling as if she has fever, and she carried herself down just as if she was pulling herself. She clasped her sister's waist, and together they descended the stairs. Richard stood waiting for them at the bottom. So she took hold of her sister. Her sister supported her, and they went down to the stairs, and Richard was standing at the bottom. Someone was opening the front door with a latchkey. It was Bentley Mallard, who entered a little travel-stained, composedly carrying his gripsack and umbrella. So now comes the twist that Mrs. Mallard was very happy that, okay, now she got a freedom. Not because her husband was dead, but because she got a freedom. Now comes the twist that somebody is opening the door with the latchkey. And who is it? It's Mr. Mallard. He was a little tired because he had traveled a long distance, but he was alive and he came. He had been far from the scene of accident and did not even know there had been one. He was far away from the accident spot, and he did not even know that there was an accident. He stood amazed at Josephine's piercing cry, at Richard's quick motion to screen him from the view of his wife. He was amazed seeing everything, that people are crying over there. Josephine was crying. Richard was amazed and everything. But Richard's was too late. When the doors came, When the doctors came, they said she had died of an heart disease of joy that kills. So after seeing Mr. Mallard, Mrs. Mallard was shocked, amazed, and she got a heart attack. The doctors said that she died because she was overjoyed. So she died. But let's keep that part for y'all and comment down that what do you feel? Why did she die? If you all like this video, don't forget to give me a like, subscribe, and don't forget to share this video. Thank you so much for watching this video till the end.